Can we dim the lights? I feel like
Yeah, there is a dimmer on that switch, and you can literally dim the lights. Yeah, that's great. I didn't set up my red and blue lighting setup for the movie, but
that's
here we
unfortunate
are.
because I feel like that would have been key to this interview.
I say to everyone, there's no promotional value to you being here, so
That's fine.
we can talk about the fact that you own a bar, and we can talk about that, but like we don't have that many listeners, so it's up to you really if you want to even talk about it.
It's chill. Like honestly, like if you thought it was relevant to know what my like credentials are upon speaking on the low ceiling, then I guess I got those, but I also can be Ricky. That's totally
I don't have credentials either.
Well, let's do it.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Uncredentialed.
Deal with it in post. Just don't yell.
Okay.
This is a not a yelling podcast.
I don't really yell.
I don't think I've ever
I
heard
only
you
yell in bands. So
yeah, actually, I do want to start off with something.
Okay.
I'm gonna give like a content warning for this episode.
Yes,
because this
100%.
Yeah,
I watched it and I was like, oh yeah, no, this is. We have a lot to talk about, but it's pretty violent. So for sure.
Also, I forgot when I watched this again for the first time for this pod. I had forgotten like the very dark aspects about his brother and how the sex worker and in this movie it's very violent. For one, there's violence against women.
Yes.
There's references to incest and sexual assault. So that's off the top. We can get that done.
Yeah, we'll tread lightly for sure, but yeah, it's a part of the movie for sure.
Yeah.
So
I'm a little different because me and my family get together and we watch this every Christmas morning, but
only God forgives?
No. But I'm just saying maybe don't do that, with your kids. That's all.
Yeah.
And when I have children, this will be the first film that they see. Then they can see Star Wars.
I mean, it is a beautiful movie, and so in its aesthetic, it's very beautiful and kind of Christmas tree.
It's beautiful in its own kind of sick way. Yes, for sure.
I think the content warning is super important.
Yeah. Welcome to the Low Ceiling. I'm John. You are
Ricky.
Ricky. What's up?
I'm not yelling.
No, you're not.
Good.
You never would.
Okay, good.
Friend. Restaurateur.
Sort of.
Artist.
I think as pretentious as it sounds, I think it's the truest of all the things that I could be is that I am an artist, which mostly means that I am overemployed and underpaid.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations for that.
Thank you.
I was thinking about it because I was like, Ricky's like a restaurateur. But when you say that in like New York, it's like restaurateurs are people who own like multiple big, fancy, beautiful, incredible, like world-class restaurants.
Whoa, what are you saying about
No, I'm not. I'm not talking about your restaurant. But when you say to Vancouver, you're like, that guy's a jerk. But you guys are not at the restaurant that you do own, run, and operate and do everything for.
Mm-hmm.
Fix, cook, serve, smile, deal with complaints.
Yes.
All of the good things.
Everything.
Yeah.
Best decision I've ever made.
Yeah.
my wallet would disagree, but my heart says
your wallet doesn't have a mind.
It's true,
and doesn't.
I don't think my heart does
have
either,
a heart.
Though. I think my brain might be like sitting this one out.
That's good. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
Pri is away. She's still in India. She's defending herself in a case where she murdered her mother. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap this back to the film we're talking about today, which is Only God Forgives, a Nicolas Winding Refn joint from 2013 starring Ryan Gosling, currently nominated for an Academy Award in the film Barbie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities between Barbie and this movie.
I haven't watched Barbie. So.
Well, in Barbie, you'd be surprised to know that in Barbie, he kind of like takes on the patriarchy,
right?
And the patriarchy cuts his hands off with a very sharp knife.
Wow, you're right. The similarities are grossly similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. So you should just. I'm shocked that you didn't watch Barbie as like a double feature with this movie.
I didn't. Yeah, and I don't want to be one of those people that didn't watch Barbie for some like crazy reason, like it's Barbie. I literally didn't watch Barbie because I just don't watch I don't go to the movies that
One
often
word,
anymore.
restaurant ownership.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I
That's
run a
2 words,
bar.
but-
I just like I don't do that anymore, which is a problem because I like movies and I really like. I actually think I would have loved to see Barbie, mostly because I really like Ryan Gosling.
Well, he's good in that.
Yeah,
I think you would have enjoyed. I think you would have enjoyed Barbie. Like it's an
so.
entertaining movie. I didn't love it, but I still respect it for what it did.
I think it could have been. I think it's probably pretty good. I have no problem, and I just read a pretty hilarious article about Ryan Gosling in Barbie. That I hope I'm not like defaming anybody here, but I was just like, wow, this article is really, really just like it was like saying like Ryan Gosling is a rarity in Hollywood because he's a man who has no problem supporting a stronger female lead. And I was like, I mean, yes, but also I'm like, I feel like we didn't need Barbie for Ryan Gosling to fall into that category.
No, I don't think so.
I think
so. Like the weird context of this film is that a couple things. This film really challenges the idea that Ryan Gosling at the time, remember, was like considered the sexiest man in the world.
Yes.
And not only that, if you remember way back, like a decade ago, he was in a film called Blue Valentine. Have you seen Blue Valentine?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
Do you remember the memes about Ryan Gosling being a good feminist?
Oh.
Hey, girl.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course I do.
Do you know why that is?
No, I actually don't.
If I remember correctly, and I'm not super connected to the world of online memes, especially it wasn't back then.
Yeah.
It's because he does Blue Valentine, where he goes down on Michelle Williams in that film. There's a scene where he's going down on her. And then in an interview, some person interviewing him was like, do you think like it's gratuitous to show a scene like that? And he said something about like, well, you would never ask me that if it was a guy getting a blowjob. It's only because a woman is getting oral sex from a man that you would ever ask me that. So all these memes popped up about him. This is like a year before this film we're talking about comes out. And in this movie, he's like the most impotent, incestuous cock ever.
He's like not likable. No one in this movie is likable.
What about Kristen Scott Thomas? You didn't like her?
Yeah, like wow, like really I remember, so I hadn't watched Only God Forgives for a minute, and I rewatched it this morning to prepare for this podcast.
Peaceful. It's a peaceful Sunday watch.
It was I kind of forgot, like, just how intense it actually is as a film.
Yes.
And specifically her character, like the mother character.
She comes in like a storm, too.
Yeah.
She's like a hurricane.
Wow. And it gets really... Yeah, like a little bit like things that make you cringe, not because it's like embarrassing, but because it's like truly like it's like nails on a chalkboard, like the very jarring, difficult, dare I say, shitty, shitty person, like truly caustic as a human being.
And the weird thing is that like there's people like her on Earth, who aren't they're not heads of kind of like a drug dealing duo of brothers in Southeast Asia, but there are people who I think do act like her, but 100%. They're just bad people. Like they're just normal bad people. It's really bizarre to have, like, she's so good in that role.
Yes,
it's unbelievable. And so Winding Refn, I watched a lot of interviews, listened to the commentary. He talked a lot. Like he mentions every time, because everyone asked, they're like, how did you get her to do this? And I can't believe he was generous enough to not be like, well, she's a fucking actress.
Yeah.
Like she acts
she acts.
But he always talked about how they went to dinner together in London.
Yeah.
And someone was like, well, we don't have enough money for her, but you could talk to her and see if she wants to do the role. And he was like, well, you were in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. You're my mom's favorite actress. And she was like, okay, I'll do the role, but I have to do only if you let me do something I've never done before, basically. And he was like, of course, like I can't really say no if you'll do the role. And she chose all of the like the blonde and the Miami and the Versace.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was all her creation in a lot of ways.
That's very cool to know, actually, because she made a villain.
She's amazing.
She is amazing.
And then
like terrifying.
Speaking of Ryan Gosling, Ryan Gosling's really good feminist image in the scene when she meets Mai, the girlfriend, ostensibly the girlfriend. Nicolas Winding Refn doesn't speak English as his first language, so he was like, I need like really horrible insults. Ryan Gosling came up with everything she said in that.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah. So Ryan Gosling like came back. He was like, yeah, I'll get you some stuff. And he came back and said, call her a cum dumpster, which is really insane.
Yeah.
And then Winding Refn was like, I think we heard that term used like 500 times that day because she had to say it over and over again. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I mean, that nails on a chalkboard, you know? But
yeah. This is the most feminist man in Hollywood, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, even just the follow up of that dinner scene, like when he goes outside with Mai and has that whole dress interaction like that.
Yeah.
The kind of big iconic moment of the take it off, right?
It's like the biggest moment he has in the film.
And it is dark. It is a dark moment.
Yeah.
So
what always strikes me about that moment, I mean, we're like skipping into the plot, but we'll get to it. But what always strikes me about that moment is he screams at her to take it off. Yeah. She takes it off, then she hands it to him, and then it's like a really long moment, and then she just brings it back. And I find it fascinating. Like there's so much in this movie that's unsaid. Yeah. And it's like, that's what makes it so fucking cool. Yeah.
I think it's one of the things that makes it a difficult movie too, though, right? Because so much of it is kind of hidden behind, the cinema of it, the specific aesthetic and pace that only Nicolas Winding Refn could pull off.
The
right?
style.
Yeah, there's a lot of style. I did wonder if, in my second watch, if there is more style than substance in Only God Forgives, because so much of the substance is hidden underneath what would be like the glossy wrapper that Ryan Refn just like loves. Like they just he just like it's a stunning movie in the sense of like what you're witnessing visually. It is a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Oh yeah,
like absolutely gorgeous.
I think Winding Refn always really has interested me because like the more I've seen a lot of his stuff, and to prepare for this movie, I was super ambitious and I was like, I'm going to watch all of his movies. The ones I haven't seen. I did not do that, but I watched Pusher, which I'd never seen before.
Okay.
I couldn't find Bleeder because it's impossible to find. I didn't watch Fear X or Pusher 1 or Pusher 2 and 3. But then I rewatched Bronson, Valhalla, Drive, and this.
Okay.
I've seen Neon Demon 100 times. We've done an episode on it. Yeah. Go back and listen. What strikes me about it is like I fell in love with him because of Drive. But Drive is probably one of his less substantive movies. It's very surfacey.
Yes.
And just like good because of what's on the surface. Whereas I think Only God Forgives and Neon Demon are good because of like the repeat viewing of them.
Yeah.
So I think there is like more to it, but you have to give it that chance, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. I think you do have to give it that chance. And I think that it's, like with a lot of things that come from, as someone that also really enjoyed Drive, I did watch this one this time feeling like, oh, it's got like, it's very ornamental. Like it's very like, and that's not to say that it was substance less, but I did think, I'm like, well, Drive felt like a pop song, like was glossy and beautiful. And it told a really like kind of simple, straightforward here in quotation marks, because nothing he does is necessarily straightforward, but like the story is, as you said, kind of like a little bit on the superficial side of things, like you can carry it on. And for the most part, there isn't much interpretation of what are the events that happen. Whereas in Only God Forgives, so many of the film's like iconic moments, like the pace setting moments of it, are ambiguous. Like you actually don't really know what anybody's thinking at any given time.
Yeah.
And or why they're doing the things that they're doing. And I think that is intelligent, but I also think that it makes it a very inaccessible movie, right?
Well, and the interesting thing, which he talks a lot about this movie, is that, and it's not helped. I watched some of the trailers. They basically they promise you Drive 2. Yeah, and it is not.
It is not Drive 2.
And he says that, like, he talked a lot about how it's like if you expect that, it's not what you are going to expect, and that is like kind of a problem. But also, once you're over that, it's one of those movies where it's like once you accept that it is the thing, then you can kind of like get into it. Drive is like incessantly rewatchable and a really good movie. Like you said, the pop song element of it, it's just that thing, and you get what you expect out of Drive a lot, This movie is constantly not giving you what you want.
Yeah.
But it's replacing it with other kind of more interesting, deeper things, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way it's like, it's kind of like, is it going to be a martial arts showdown? And then Ryan Gosling fights this guy and he gets his ass handed to him. He goes and at the end, he takes the guy's other sword. Is he going to go and fight him with the sword? No, he just gives him his hands to cut off. Yeah. Like, it's very...
And uses the sword to stab his brother.
Yeah. Like, it's like a weird antithesis of everything you might think will happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's such a ride of a film because I also just kind of feel like it's people stuck in like a purgatory or something. Like it just feels very, I think this is very true of him and a lot of his work. Yeah. Like it's in a capsule almost. And all of these events matter only to the people that are involved with them, but have like no real consequence outside of it. Like the world that it takes place in is empty.
Like even Bangkok itself feels lifeless for a city
Totally.
that's so alive.
Totally.
And even like everyone is sort of a pawn, certainly to the cop.
Yes.
Right?
Which, like, what? I didn't watch the credits, which I feel like it's a huge blasphemous thing that I just admitted to doing.
There's a post-credit scene where Iron Man shows up.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I definitely missed that one for sure.
Yeah.
But I do remember weirdly that cop character somewhere, wasn't he like called the devil?
Tom Burke, Citizen Kane himself, he says in the first scene, he says, "Time to meet the devil," right?
Yeah.
Now, he's not referring to the cop.
Yeah.
But when he says that, that's when you see him on screen for the first time.
Yeah.
They call him Chang, like in the synopses.
Yeah.
But he's unnamed. And the reason for that is that for Winding Refn, he is actually meant to be this like supernatural force, but he's a person who believes himself to be God.
Oh, okay.
And that's like an actual thing.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And yeah, in the way that he justly takes people's like punishment or metes out punishment to people in a very godlike way.
Totally.
And it's fascinating you say like the purgatorial elements of it, because it's like, yeah, they are stuck in purgatory and they have to answer to God, all of them. All of these people. Tom Burke, Ryan Gosling, KST, all of them eventually have to answer to this man.
Yeah, he's so phenomenal. Like
he's amazing in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, definitely a force to be reckoned with, and definitely it's hard to say that he's the antagonist of the film, because he isn't really, but he's definitely one of the main motivators.
This actor is named Vithaya Pansringarm, Thai actor. Very good. Also a master of that like sword thing that he actually used, which was a total coincidence when they hired him to play the cop.
No way.
Yeah, he's like a martial arts guy. Yeah. It's funny you say that about the like antagonist kind of thing, because it's really kind of Kristen Scott Thomas is the antagonist.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Like as the mother. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. But like he's not an antagonist, but he's merciless, you know? He is true quote unquote justice, which sometimes doesn't feel necessarily fair, even though it's like super fair. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think it has its own internal logic though.
Yes.
That's what you're supposed to feel. Like the scene when he brings the father beats Tom Burke to death.
Yeah.
And then he takes his hand for punishment for the offense of allowing his teenage daughter to become a sex worker.
Yeah.
That like has a villainous logic to it that you can see, right? He's allowing the father to mete out a greater punishment, which is taking a man's life.
I mean, that's putting it lightly to what he does to him in that scene, but yes.
Yeah. He's punishing the father. He's like taking a step back. It's like, if I had met you before this man had killed your daughter, I would have cut off your arm because your daughter is a sex worker. You know what I mean? It's like in the wrong order.
I kind of felt like in some ways what he did was like, I'm going to do something, like if we're looking at it from like a how to keep your hands clean kind of place, right? Like I always felt like that scene was like, oh, you know, like this guy, like we could do the general cop thing we could do to people like this, which is like arrest them, put them in jail, all that stuff. This is the first time you actually see him be a police officer, right? Like be a cop. You aren't really ready or prepared yet to understand that what happens in this world is a little bit illogical and it's not going to follow like traditional trajectory. You still think that maybe if the police are investigating a murder that they're going to do police like things like arrest people and take accounts and stuff. And instead he's like, well, you know, there's greater justice in this world, like the justice that a father can exact on a person who just killed this person's daughter. And so he's like, I'm going to let you do that. And to me, it always felt like, in a way, like, sure, he was punishing him for the immorality, quote unquote, of letting his daughter become a sex worker. But I was thinking he was punishing him being like, you did kill a man. Yeah. Like, you killed a man. And because I understand that you killed him because he did something worse to you, your punishment isn't death, but I must punish you because you, even though I condoned what you did, it's still not condonable, which is like truly what God would probably say, or like a devil or something, right? Like that it's like, I'm going to let you do this, but know that there will be consequences.
Well, you know what's interesting? I'm not sure if it's exactly he condones it. Yeah. But he just says to the guy, do whatever you want. Yeah. And whatever you want doesn't mean kill him. You have to kill the guy. Totally. You could also let Tom Burke go. He's like, he leaves the moral judgment up to this man when the moral judgment could also just be like forgiveness. Like, that's an actual possibility. Totally. You know? Yeah. And then like God is like, well, you made this decision, which is kind of the worst decision. It might cost you your hand because of that.
But in some ways, I also feel like the cops maybe inner monologue around this was also like, well, one less thing I need to clean up, you know, like this was taken care of for me. Great, you know?
Yeah, like because I feel like the Chang, like his decision would be like, well, if I deal with Tom Burke, it will also be the father is like the only chance for Tom Burke to actually get away with what he did. Yeah. Which is like, if the father forgives him, he can do it. But the cop is kind of like, he's like, if you let me do it, he's missing more than his hands, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really just find the Chang character of this like probably the most fascinating part of it, because they also use him, you know, I was thinking a lot about like the politics of this movie while I was watching it, right? Because Nicolas Winding Refn is Danish and he mostly considers himself American, you were saying earlier, actually.
Yeah, he said in an interview that he grew up in New York, so he feels like kind of between American and Danish a lot, but he considers himself more New Yorker than Danish.
So I think regardless, I think something that falls here is that like he isn't Thai. You know, like there is, you know, I was thinking about like there's a lot of like this movie is being viewed through like a white lens, right? And then but we see these like terrible American characters or British characters, like Western characters, we'll call them, right? Yeah. Like in Julian, Ryan Gosling, Billy, the mom whose name I forget, like because I think they just call her mother. I don't know.
Oh God, I don't remember.
I don't think she has like a name.
Mommy Dearest.
Mommy Dearest. I don't know. Yeah. And then he, on the other hand, Chang, you know, so they kind of, to me, symbolize a lot of like Western influence in Thailand or in like Eastern Asian communities and cultures that have had Americanization happen, right? Like, especially now. This also kind of exacerbated a little bit by the fact that they're a drug dealing family.
Yeah. And like they own their front business is like the weird kind of dark irony of their front business is also getting Thai men to fight each other. Yeah. Like they're a Muay Thai boxing club, you know? Yeah,
they own a Thai boxing club. Yeah, and so you have that. You have these American Westerners who do this, and it feels very exploitative. Like, and I think that's part of what makes the movie something that's difficult, that it does feel a little bit exploitative because there is a cultural exploitation that happens with it, because in many ways it's part of the story that I think it tries to tell, right? Because then you have a character like Chang, who to me feels like a very like epitome of traditionalism, the epitome of like isolationism in terms of like the values and morals of like the Thai people, essentially. Because to me it always stuck out that they always position him as like a traditionalist. He uses a sword. Yeah. He lives in a very like non-neon house. Like everything else in the world is like lit in neon and fluorescent lights, but his house is always depicted with like bright windows and like very spare, not a lot of decoration. He never speaks in English, right? Like almost every other character, every Thai character speaks in English at some point to talk to the Westerners, to talk to like.
He never really talks directly to anybody.
No,
any white person.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always thought that was also very fascinating. And then weirdly put him, not weirdly, but just like in this like almost like jarring moment, then they position him in these like kind of act breaks in the karaoke scenes.
Yeah,
where he's just like singing these pop songs, these karaoke pop songs.
It's hard work you need to relax sometimes.
Yeah, but he's just doing it so stiffly. He's just standing on the stage with like just one bright light on him, and he's just like, it's weird because he looks like he's in a trance and not in a trance at the same time. Like he's like singing, he's hitting the notes, but he's not emoting, but he kind of is. It's the performance is just wild, honestly.
It's pretty crazy how this movie has like 2 really amazing performances in it, which, and neither of them are Ryan Gosling. Like Gosling's fine, I don't have anything against him, but like just
no, but he's not the star.
Yeah, but like Vithaya and KST are just so much more interesting, and they're bringing something so interesting. And I think like, so Refn said this thing about, there's something about Chang as the character. He's enforcing this inherently illogical chaos back onto these people because like they want to bring, as you said, kind of like maybe white Western tradition values and things like that to this place that does not hold them properly, because he's like, in a way, he's just reinforcing the values of the land where he is, kind of. And I think part of that is like, it's shown in the contrast between the way that Chang goes about getting justice, quote unquote, and the way that KST goes about getting, quote unquote, justice as well, right? It's like her youngest son dies. She's got to hire a person to go first kill the father and then kill the cop, and everything is right in the world. Whereas like Chang has a much more logical kind of like Old Testament version of that, you know? And yeah, I find that really fascinating too.
Yeah, it's definitely just a movie about who can exact revenge faster. It almost feels like 2 warring parties exacting revenge on each other for...
Yeah, and like exacting revenge in ways that like us as kind of normies are just like, you guys are both fucking like
you're
insane.
Both crazy.
Like, it's so
you're
wild.
Both crazy,
yeah.
But
yeah. What do you think of? Okay, so one thing I find really fascinating about this movie is like the first time I saw it, I did not like it very much. And also lots of people really didn't like it. Like it was like booed at like the Cannes Film Festival, much like another fellow Dane of his, Lars von Trier's Antichrist. Like it was just like a huge thing where people were expecting a thing and they didn't get it. And Winding Refn has said that he actually likes that reception of it, and he kind of revels in it a little bit. And he said something where he was like, it's better to be evoking extreme reactions than just meh.
That's true.
And he's really happy with how people receive this movie. Like, what do you think of that idea?
Jesus, that is such a big topic, right? Because
what do you think of art? Tell me what you think of art.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
yeah.
Here's the thing, right? That it's like, I agree to an extent with Refn on that, right? Like, I think that art should move you. That's the truth. Like, music should move you, painting should move you, movies should move you. If things aren't moving you, if you're not feeling something, whether that be happiness, like fear, whatever, right? Like
disgust in the case of this film a lot.
In the case of this film, a lot of disgust. To some degree, then yeah, I agree. Like, then it's man, and why did you make something that has no value beyond a tepid reception, right? Like, you just like can like watch it, forget it, and it's over, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like I really relate to Winding Refn, like in the way that as a viewer, like I'm not a film director, but like as a viewer, it sounds so dumb, but it's like films are more interesting when they're interesting rather than just kind of being like a piece of bread, like it's yeah.
No, I agree, right? But then there's also this other side of, in my opinion, like my work as a graphic designer, there's also a matter of like, or even songwriting, like it really art making, creative practice, right? Like to take the stand that part of what you can do is piss people off through disgust or whatever. it's still a very privileged place to exist from, right? Like Refn can take that stand because he, in many ways, is still immune to true criticism. He's a fairly popular director, has a strong portfolio behind him, and like even if generally Cannes didn't like it, he's got numerous fans, and I don't think Only God Forgives would lose him the support of like the core people that enjoy his work, right?
Also, like I think with this movie specifically, he can take that stand because Drive was received like with rapture at the last Cannes Film Festival, and like he can kind of a lot of goodwill when this film came out for sure.
Yeah, and so. But, you know, and I'm not like the thing is, I'm not even saying that this is necessarily a bad thing, but it's the truth, right? That it's like when there is something that I think that you still need to care about your audience. And I'm not saying that you need to protect them. And, you know, I'm very much a person that thinks that the playground should have like wood chips because kids should get splinters. Like that's how you learn. That's how you experience the world. And part of how you experience the world is you need to experience the darkness of the world. And I think a lot of people have moved away from being able to interact with art that is about darkness.
I've always admired your political position that if you ever ran for office, you would give children splinters on purpose.
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
I think that's something that not a lot of politicians are willing to really go for. And I look forward to your career.
Just got a few more splinters during his growing up, maybe we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in here in Vancouver.
Definitely gonna bleep that name.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you don't want to get sued or something. My bad.
And that's just your political opinion.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. I think that.
And I think a lot of people are scared, or not scared, but like have drawn away from engaging with dark art or like the art about darkness or threading darker topics because our words carry so much more weight now in a world where our words are like, you know, cemented into time by me right now in this podcast, literally saying this opinion or going
this
on.
Will be going to space for the aliens. For
That's
sure.
fine. Yeah,
send it.
I mean, I don't know if I have a choice in it anymore. That's the thing. Almost any time you put an opinion out into the public sphere can take it, right? And I think people are scared to talk about things that are uncomfortable. And specifically, I think about this with Only God Forgives because there's a lot of things that are very uncomfortable about it, right? Like, it's a particularly violent film towards women, for one, right? And that is something that is dark and real, but a lot of people don't want to engage with it because it's dark and real. And at that point, you really have to mediate, like, how important is carrying the message of the movie versus what the actual cultural or, like, impact it might be on its viewership when it's so gratuitously violent, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, it's like, I'm not even saying that in order to, like, be like, this movie doesn't deserve that accolade or that, but it's a movie that, as I was watching it, made me think a lot about that, about art that is purposely grating, because that is a thing, right? Like, I listen to grindcore and noise music. Like, there's nothing that is meant to be accessible or approachable about those genres of music, but I still enjoy them, even though, you know, like, if I listen to something, I don't know, like some crazy grind band that talks about like murdering like 100 people or something, it's like, I'm not like for that, but I can enjoy what they're trying to do with like what they're doing as a grind band or something, right? And in a lot of ways, I feel like Only God Forgives falls in a similar place of like, it's a dark movie about dark things, and
that's why we did a content warning.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I mean that, like, I don't mean that in a flippant way.
Yeah,
I was listening. The sadist that I am, I was re-listening to the episode Pri and I did on Antichrist, right?
Yeah, okay.
Something I said in that, and I say that again here, is that like, I'm not because we do these movies, I do them because I'm interested in them, or you, Ricky, are interested in them, or Pri is interested in them. It's a consensus that we all drive, that we're like, we like this movie. Me and you have talked about how much we both like this film.
Yes.
But with something like Antichrist too, which I think is a harsher film than this.
Yeah.
But I said this in the episode, is like, it's also okay to be like, I don't want to watch a movie where there's lots of violence done to women.
Yeah.
Even if KST is a total bitch. Like, that's fine. Like, that's, you don't have to like tape your eyes open and watch it. Like, that's a totally legitimate and okay criticism to have.
Yeah.
If you feel that way and it prevents you from engaging with the artwork that I believe this film is, that's also totally fine too. Like, I don't judge people for having that feeling.
Yeah.
But like, it's harder when it gets around to what happened with Antichrist, where they were just like, well, that movie's just misogynist. I'm like, well, it's not though. That's the thing. I just don't think that it is.
Yeah.
And when you start to label these things like this movie, by being like, just because it has violence depicted against women means it's misogynist, it's as silly as saying like Blue Valentine is feminist and Ryan Gosling is feminist for taking part in the film. Like, I don't think that that's really a one-to-one comparison. You're also labeling intent upon someone like Nicolas Winding Refn that you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very dismissive way of viewing it, basically.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you don't want to watch it, don't do it. That's
totally
kind of my thing about it. And again, no one's forcing you to engage with art that makes you uncomfortable, but I think you should. I think you should. To a limit.
Agree.
And everyone has a limit, and I think that's okay to have a limit. Yeah.
I agree, and I think that a lot of what then comes after is like how you respond to it, how you move on from that experience, either by disdain or not, is still like totally you're right, and you should. And I completely agree, right? And there's so much to choose. You really got me with the saying like they don't tape your eyes open. It's like, it's true. And part of watching this movie is also watching it through squinting eyes at times. You know, like there are definitely moments where you just kind of pull, like kind of squint and pull your eyes back a little bit because you're like, oh, this is gonna be brutal. You know?
I really like, maybe we can unpack this a little bit, because I really like art or artwork or things like that and Winding Refn's very good at this.
Yes.
But things where you're like, well, I like that, but it doesn't elicit pleasure in me. That's not you know what I mean? Like, there's an aesthetic to it that doesn't elicit pleasure, but you are at the same time admirable of it. And I'll give you an example from a Refn film. Like, there's a scene where Ryan Gosling stomps a guy's head in an elevator.
In Drive.
Which is disgusting.
Yeah.
But also there's something aesthetically pleasing about that scene because of the catharsis of it. The fact that he's protecting Carey Mulligan.
Yeah.
The fact that a person would go so far as to do that to protect another person. Like, there's this whole wrap of feelings where you're just kind of like, this elicits pleasure within me, but I do like watching this, you know? But it's hard to understand like the word for it, and this movie has a lot of that too.
I mean, but I think that's exactly what I mean by about like an appreciation for like the darkness, right? Like an appreciation for things that are, you know, and I mean that goes totally into the whole like, can you separate art from artists, blah blah blah. But like, to keep it on topic and on this movie, or at least on Refn, you're right. There is something kind of like, I mean, it's the same drive that makes people listen to like doom music, you know, or at least in my opinion, it's not about pleasure. It's about like
feeling.
But
not exactly pleasurable feeling.
It's just, it's almost like a reminder of what it means to feel something, and not something necessarily good, but something like hard or difficult, or
it's like a movie that makes you like, there's like one spectrum where it's like a movie that makes you cry.
Yeah.
It's
totally.
like, well, logically people don't want to feel like really sad, but there is this release in watching a film that's like, that makes you weep or something like that.
Totally.
Right? Or a piece of art or listening to a piece of music. And I don't know, like, I like movies that get at that, and I think movies like this kind of get at that too. And I think Refn, he's kind of like, he's just so good at that.
What do you think Refn wanted out of it? What do you think, like, Refn's, like, I know that he was like, I'm glad that people booed it, but, like, what do you think he wants people to, like, feel from this movie? Angry?
Well, I don't really think of Refn as, like, a provocateur, kind of, much like I don't believe the same about Lars von Trier. And I feel like Refn, he's just but I do think he understands that some people will watch this movie and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know?
Yeah.
I think he understood it with Neon Demon as well.
Yeah.
I think that, I don't know what he wants out of this thing, but I think it's a culmination of these like interests of his own that kind of like build block by block into a pyramid that creates a total movie. Whereas, like, for one, he wrote this, right? He wrote Neon Demon. He wrote this. He did not write Drive. Drive came to him as a script, and he makes it. And you can kind of tell. Yeah. But also, like, it's a really good question. I don't know. It's hard to label that intent. You know?
To me, you know, maybe taking a step back from the plot and the things in it, but just as a movie in his catalog. To me, sometimes it feels like Drive did really well, and then people with money were like, hey, drive was really good, and it was like really like it had lights everywhere, and like people weren't really talking, and it was really slow, and that was really cool. Can you do that again? And Refn was like, oh yeah,
I got that shit in my back pocket.
Yeah, I can do that again. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
And then he took all that money and made a movie that's like, but you're gonna hate it. But you are going to hate it.
I think so. I think it's like not a coincidence that when you watch something like Valhalla Rises, have you seen Valhalla Rises?
Like eons ago. But
yeah, like you see something like Valhalla Rises in comparison, and then skip over Drive in comparison to this, and then you're like, those are similar films in the way that they're paced and edited and cut and all this kind of stuff. Whereas like Drive feels like this standout from his style, and so does something like, I don't know if have you seen Bronson?
No, I haven't seen Bronson.
So I rewatched Bronson too, and Bronson is just like insane. Like it's just an insane film, and it's also very not like the Refn we know today.
Mm-hmm.
But like the Refn who's given full reign to do whatever he wants, produces movies like Only God Forgives, The Neon Demon, his series on Amazon, The Too Old to Die Young, which is like just quintessential him. And then the one he did on Netflix, Copenhagen Cowboy, which is also just like his aesthetic, just completely.
Yeah, Copenhagen Cowboy, which is the one I've seen out of those two, is definitely like, it's just like the Nicolas Winding Refn Palooza, you know? Like
Yeah. And he's, I think in a weird way, I would have to guess that what he wants out of a movie like this is to establish that it's like, Drive was good, but I am not Drive. I am something totally different.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like maybe that's his intent. Because he actually said about this movie, I read in an interview, he said about Only God Forgives, he was like, I don't consider that a very artistically intent film. Like I don't think of it as like my quintessential film. And I'm like, well, what are you watching?
Yeah.
Because it is like, it's so his thing.
It is his, yeah.
And it also starts what he has now become with Only God Forgives, Neon Demon, Too Old to Die Young, Copenhagen Cowboy. You're just like, but these are so you. Like this is so your thing. And it's, I don't know, it's fascinating.
That's so funny because, yeah, I mean, this movie to me, it's almost like it's so shallow but also so deep, but there's like no in between with it. It's either like right against the ocean floor or it's just on the shoreline, but there's no in between ocean with it, in my opinion. And I say this because I watched this with my partner. They actually hated it. They were like, wow, that was awful.
I wish they were here.
Yeah, right. Right. They hated it.
No spoiler. They will be on the show next week.
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
We're talking about a movie they like.
They should have been here for this one, but they didn't like it. And, you know, and a lot of the reasons they didn't like it are reasons why I did like it. And so, but it's funny because their interpretation of certain things in the movie, like how vacuous it can be because it just has all of this empty space. It's a very like open movie where the character isn't even like what's happening aren't even the characters. It's like the room is happening. You know, it's like the karaoke scene where like literally no one is moving except for the guy singing.
They're not blinking,
and they're not even blinking. Yeah, like it's crazy.
It's so fast. I'm gonna be tempted to like ask M next week to talk about this movie.
Yeah,
because I know that I've known M for a long time, and they don't dismiss anything out of hand without thought, and so I'm so fascinated because like. Yeah, like I'm so curious as to what they thought, and
you should just talk to them honestly because
right,
they have good thoughts on this.
We'll have a bonus section on the next week's.
Yeah, do it.
Because the last long conversation I had with them, Em asked me, "Is Michael Clayton a good movie?" Which was on New Year's Eve, and I was like, "Yeah, it's a great movie."
Yeah, and then I was like, "Oh, good," because I was not in the mental state to know what kind of movie it was.
Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
But you know, and it's funny because some of the things that they found were like difficult to the movie. I was like, oh, but that's like part of what is so beautiful about it. Like it's how it's paced, how it really. Can we talk about plot for a second? Because there's like a moment.
We can talk about plot. Yeah.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about like a bunch of nonsense about it, so we can get into the plot if you want to get into.
Well,
something.
there's just one thing that was kind of one of the ambiguous moments of the film that I feel is like truly what I think how you interpret this moment is how you view the film.
What scene is it?
It is the scene where Ryan Gosling gets the shit beaten out of him by Chang.
Yes. Then let's talk about the plot and we'll get there.
Okay.
Because the plot,
okay.
The thing about the plot in this movie is like it's a 90-minute film.
Yeah, it's quite short.
It's pretty short, even though it feels like pretty long because of how slowly paced it is. Yeah, let's get into the plot. Then we'll kind of talk about it scene by scene. Julian, Ryan Gosling, Billy, played by Citizen Kane. They run a box. I had totally forgotten that it was Tom Burke.
I honestly didn't even know it was Tom Burke.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. He Tom Burke, who
I keep thinking that Tim Roth is in it. So. And he's not.
That one Australian guy looks like Tim Roth. He looks like Tim Roth's older, bigger-faced brother.
Totally.
Yeah.
That.
So they own this like Muay Thai club, and they watch a guy fight, and then Billy says, he gets the money, he says, time to go meet the devil.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck does that mean? And what it means is he wants to go to a brothel and have sex with an underage girl, as he says very explicitly to the brothel owner, which is... It's like so shocking. It is like actually shocking when he says that.
Totally, it's very uncomfortable. It's like it's like right in the beginning of the film too. So like you really like really like it was the cold dip in like oh my god, like he literally just said that.
You see Gosling for a minute, and then it's the Billy story for like another 6-7 minutes.
It's a dark little story.
Oh my god, the part where he tells the brothel and he's like I want to have sex with an underage girl, and then he just attacks those sex workers is so like it's just so scary because you're just like
scary.
Why is he doing any of this? It's like it's really awful.
Yeah, and even he tells the brothel owner like he's like, why don't you bring your daughter here? And I was like, damn, dude, that is so like whoa. And like it once again just reminds me of like he writes these characters of tremendous privilege, like characters that 100% feel like they are in a world that they control and can ask these things of it. There's a imperviousness to the way that Billy interacts with the world around him that then is like clearly destroyed by Chang when Chang enters the picture. That to me is like you don't like Billy and it's purposeful so that when Billy gets his head fucking smashed in and you get to see it, which is pretty hard. You still can be like, you know what? Deserved.
Yeah.
Like, you can still kind of be like, wow, that was brutal. And yet I think I'm still on the side of like that he deserved his head smashed in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do. I mean, that might be one of the least ambiguous parts is like, this guy's not good.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, if you had any doubts that Billy was good, let me put that up to you. Let me change that right now.
Yeah. He gets beaten up in this one brothel. He goes to another brothel.
Mm-hmm.
He finds his teenage girl and he takes her and just kills her. Kills her.
Which you don't get to see.
You don't see, but it's pretty violent.
It's pretty violent anyway.
Like the aftermath is.
Yeah, the reveal's pretty but
it's
dark.
one of those things that's like absurdly aesthetic for how awful it is because like the room is like covered in blood.
But it's a very like it's exactly the tone of red that we've come to expect from Nicolas Winding Refn,
So the Chang shows up to see this. He brings the father. He says, "Do what you want. Do whatever you want." The father beats Billy to death, while Chang tacitly says that's okay. Then Chang and the cops take the father out to middle of nowhere Bangkok,
like a land,
and cut his hand off.
Yeah,
and then Ryan Gosling is at the sex club with his ostensible sex worker girlfriend.
Yeah.
That actress was actually a pop singer when she was a teenager in Thailand. She was like
cool,
pretty well known.
Yeah,
but she had like burnt out on singing, and she kind of wanted to reinvent her career. She's very good in this movie.
Yes,
she's very good.
She's very good.
This is also I never thought about this until I listened to the commentary.
Yeah,
there's a scene where she pleasures herself in front of Ryan Gosling and ties his hands down.
Yes.
And there's all these like symbols of Ryan Gosling's impotence because of the spoiler alert incestual abuse he suffered at the hands of his mother that's strongly hinted at later in the film.
Yes.
Found that really fascinating. And he sees a vision of Chang
slicing his hands off.
Slicing his hands off.
Before it actually happened.
Then he finds out his brother's been killed.
Yeah.
The actor Gordon Brown, he's been in a bunch of Winding Refn movies. He's like the other Irish. I think he's Irish. Mm. Yeah. He's been in a couple Winding Refn movies, and he's such a interesting performer, especially in this one, because he just kind of looks.
Yeah, he has like 2 lines.
He has a couple lines, but he's just a great little background guy, and he's got a lovely face. I wish he did more. Yeah, he's cool. So Julian finds out that Billy's dead.
Yeah.
KST arrives in all her glory. Her
it's terrible.
Glory.
And it's terrible. Every minute that she is on screen is terrible.
Yeah. Did you the part where she talks to the front desk worker at the hotel?
Oh my God.
Give me flashbacks of working in customer service.
Yeah, it blows your socks off, honestly. I'm just like, oh, that is so uncomfortable. And like, and she's written so well because she's written like the gaslighty, manipulative witch that she is.
That first scene, everything about her is in that first scene.
Yeah.
And like how she's like so still. And then there's like a really long, uncomfortable moment. And she's like, what's your fucking problem?
Yeah.
it's like Jesus
Christ.
Yeah.
Or even when she's just like, I'm grieving the death of my first son.
Yeah.
And this bitch won't give me my room. And it's like, if you didn't know that she was like a horrible human and had she not expressed it in such a like terrible way, maybe perhaps you would feel some empathy. You'd be like, oh, your son was killed. That's very unfortunate, right? But instead you're like, wow, I don't really care that your son died. Your son was an asshole and you are also an asshole.
It's so funny that like Billy kills a young girl and you're like, that guy deserves to die. And then KST is rude to an innocent lady at a front desk and you're like, she also deserves to die.
She also deserves to die. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So she arrives and she talks to Julian and is like, hey, you have to avenge your brother's death to find this guy who killed him.
Yeah.
And eventually they do. They find the father. They don't kill him.
They don't kill him. No, he lets him go. And
yes, because the father says it's the cop.
It's the cop.
He fingers the cop, basically. Yeah. There's an interesting part in this scene where Winding Refn talked about how when the father's confessing, Gordon Brown is there, Ryan Gosling is there, and another actor whose name I forget, but he plays Charlie in the film.
Mm-hmm.
He'll come up later. He's a Thai actor. And they're interrogating him. And the cop is the father is explaining what happened.
Yeah.
The sound cuts out and it goes to score at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason was Winding Refn was like, originally we had this like long logical explanation about why the cop is the way that he is. And it was terrible. And I hated it. And so instead I just cut it out and I like let it be this like illogical, magical mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and it worked so much better. And I'm like, yes, it did.
It did.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Because originally there was like some sort of like supernatural logic-esque explanation. And I was like, I'm glad you never really explained it.
No. Magic realism isn't good if you have to explain it, I think. So
yeah. We meet the cop has a young daughter being taken care of by a woman who I don't think they're married. This is a caretaker.
No, this sounds like it's a caretaker. Yeah. Because he comes in and pays her immediately. Like, that's the first thing that he does when he enters the house. He pulls out the thing from his pocket, and she's very grateful.
Yeah.
Like, you're really led to believe that for all of his brutality, he's a fairly, like, good person. Whatever that means to, like, a walking, talking demigod, you know? But
Yeah. KST, she finds out about the cop. She targets the cop. There's, this might be slightly out of order, but that's okay. She targets the cop. And the cop is shot at by these guys.
Yeah, he gets they try to like do a drive-by while he's eating lunch with his two kind of like the two cops that are always with him.
Yeah.
Who are dressed like police, unlike him, who is dressed like an assassin.
He's actually costumed in what Thai police officers traditionally wear when they retire.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting. I wondered because it did look very much like it looked military to some degree, or at least it did look like a uniform, but it wasn't the uniform that the other police officers were wearing. So
yeah. The other and the his like kind of second in command cop who talks more than he does. Honestly, he's also very good in this film. Just his like his kind of like threatening bureaucratic presence.
Yeah, he's like the mouth of Mordor, you know.
Yeah, that's so good. And then as they fail, the cop hits the one guy with boiling oil.
Oh my god!
So that assassin that they send, the one with the longer hair and the scarf,
this cool scarf,
gives like Tarantino has to cast him in a film.
I know.
He's got serious Tarantino vibes.
Does.
He's so good. He was a stuntman actually.
Oh, really?
And a lot of the kind of side characters in this movie, because the budget was so low, were stuntmen, and they just put them on. Yeah. But he gets killed. He gets cut open.
Yeah, he gets really killed, but he gets killed also after he gives up the other guy that was a part of the assassination attempt,
who is spared because of his son, who's
spared
disabled,
because of his son, and because he gives him the information that you're led to believe that he gives the cop the information that he was looking for about who actually hired him to kill him, right? Like,
find the middle-aged white lady yelling at the next customer service person in Bangkok.
Like,
that's her.
You can't miss her.
Speaking of which, the Ryan Gosling goes for dinner with mom and Mai.
Oh God, that scene is so painful.
An insane scene.
That is
absolutely insane. Yeah.
Yeah, like Mai, I feel so bad for her. She's actually so like kind to him for like no, and like the thing is like
she puts up with a lot.
And up to that point, you kind of feel a little sad for Ryan Gosling more than anything. He showed enough humanity out of his terrible family. By comparison, that at that point in the movie, you're still kind of like, maybe he's going to have a redemption arc of some form. And I mean, maybe to some degree he does. We'll get to that, I guess. But like, but in that scene, to me, you lose a little bit. You lose a lot of faith in him. At least I did.
I find I have a lot of sympathy for Ryan Gosling in this movie. Not because my mother is anything like this at all. My mother is lovely. But because I just feel like, Ryan, you're a dipshit. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? And as Mai says to him, she's like, why do you let her talk to you like that?
Yeah.
He's such a impotent mama's boy in a way. And that's the whole thing.
Because he's traumatized, right? Like, that's the thing. It's like he was abused. Like, you're led to believe that his whole life has been abused at the hands of his mother, and that this is the relationship that he has with her because that's the relationship that she made it be.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing is, it's like he secretly... He knows that it's crazy.
Oh no, he hates her,
and
he hates her.
Yeah, and it's like he needs Mai to be a witness to the insanity.
Yeah,
and it's so there's like a part like Ryan. I love Ryan Gosling as an actor, but there's this little part in this where KST is like talking about how much bigger Billy's dick was than him.
Oh my God!
And then Ryan Gosling does this little like head tilt. He like tilts his chin down, be like a very much like, really, like this is what you're. And it's like. It's so imperceptible at this moment, but you're just like, he is so good at that.
He is.
Like just face acting. He doesn't even like change his expression.
I was going to say that possibly the most accolade I can offer Ryan Gosling on this movie is that he does a lot for somebody that at least 80% of this movie is just looking around.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like he it's just like various shots of him looking at things.
How many lines of dialogue do you think he has?
I
have the answer.
You actually have the answer? I would say probably about 30.
17.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I was being very generous. And they're apart from the take it off, they're all very quiet little lines.
Very quiet. They're barely anything. Contrasted with Barbie, he just won't shut the fuck up in them. He just talks on, and it's just he's like, I'm Ken. Barbie's like, I know. That's it. That's the only line. Yeah. Greta Gerwig, Academy Award winner. So that dinner is awesome. Ryan Gosling Chang comes to investigate the club to figure out who KST is, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Then Ryan Gosling recognizes him as the man from his visions.
Yeah.
Follows him through the streets of Bangkok, doesn't find him. Eventually they find each other and they fight. Ryan Gosling gets his fucking ass kicked.
You know, it's quite cool in a way because in the moment that he takes the fight, he's the one that instigates it. He goes up to Chang and goes, hey, want to fight?
Want to fight?
Want to fight?
It's like the key line from the trailer. Yeah.
And in very Refn fashion, it's just like the slowest shot of Chang eventually like softly nodding. And in that moment, you actually think like, oh, Chang might think that, because at this point, all you've done is watch Chang and Ryan Gosling be pretty brutal. Like be pretty brutal.
Ryan Gosling beats up two guys in that club.
And in that moment, and he does so in like probably the dumbest way possible. Like he just slaps them silly, but he does it in a very vicious way where you're like, whoa, that looks at the same time a little pathetic, but still like really painful.
It's the movie has this interesting like constant creation of hierarchies because like Gosling to feel bigger beats up these two men, but he's like on this pedestal below his mother. Yeah. And when he brings Mai to meet his mother, he's like subconsciously placing her below him, kind of, you know what I mean? And then when he meets Chang, it's like a force even more powerful to reckon with than his mother.
Yeah.
And that not only like involves not just psychological abuse, but also getting the shit kicked out of you. Yeah.
Chang is like, this is just like a little aside, I guess, but Chang is like what the Joker, I think, wishes that he could be in a lot of ways, like the unstoppable force. Chang is the unstoppable force of justice, or you know, and
similar vibe, I think.
Yeah,
similar villainy, I think, as like the Nolan's Joker kind of. Yeah, absolutely. Less entertaining of a role, maybe, but like entertaining in a different way. For sure. Yeah,
because I loved watching that actor just move around and do stuff. It just like, he's so threatening.
He really steals the movie.
He does,
like, I thought, you know, it's kind of a toss-up between him and KST, but eventually the thing is at the end, and we're not going to skip ahead, but I'll spoil it. At the end, you're kind of like, yeah, Chang was kind of right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Chang was kind of right.
Okay, you wanted to say about this fight, though.
Yeah. So he nods, and so you're kind of led to believe that Ryan Gosling, like, that Chang thinks, oh, this guy might actually put up a fight. Like, this might, like, it almost like, I will don this peasant a fight with me because he might stand the chance at beating me. And so you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be like the fight of the century. Like, Ryan Gosling just tore apart those two other dudes, and then Chang just like stands like a doll in the middle of the arena while Ryan Gosling prepares and circles him, only to get his ass absolutely handed to him. And eventually his mother walks in. Like, Mai's there too, watching this all happen, and the other two cops are there. So there's like there are witnesses, right? And I think, and maybe I'm like totally reading too much into what I think happened here, or why the mother character ends up at the ring at that time, but I actually have a feeling, I think that Ryan Gosling kind of knew that the fight against Chang was going to be a loss, and that by bringing him to the ring, and then essentially what I can only assume, inviting his mother to the ring, being like, I'm going to kill the man that did this to Billy. He in a way actually helped Chang because he wanted to put Chang in the room with his mother without being like, it was my mother. But Chang in that moment recognizes, like, that's her. That's the person. And from that, and to me, it actually felt like that was Ryan Gosling actually for the first time truly betraying his mom. Like, he betrayed her in that moment.
Yeah, and the thing is too is when Ryan Gosling goes to KST and says, like, it's more complicated than just this father killing Billy, Ryan Gosling is actually secretly is like, Chang was completely justified.
Yeah.
In totally. What happened. And his mother can't emotionally see it, but Ryan Gosling is like, no, Billy did something really wrong. But he still is under the thumb of his mother at this point. And his mother is still like, yes, but the logical justice aspect of this doesn't satisfy my bloodlust for the killing of the son who I loved more than you.
Yeah, it's like, yes, but I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. But you know that Ryan Gosling, and I think that's an interesting way of putting it. I never really thought of that, but that is the moment where Chang basically recognizes that it's like,
exactly.
She is. That's the woman.
Up to at that point, he actually had no idea that who she was. And ultimately, what he wants in multiple occasions actually proves that Ryan Gosling was never his mark. He even goes to the club the first time to investigate it and says the line,
it's not that guy.
This is not the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you don't even really know why the hell he's saying it, but he says it.
It's because when the guy who gives up KST, the Thai hitman with the disabled son, who gives it up, he obviously has told Chang there was another white man there.
Yes.
And that white man was Gordon Brown, I believe.
Yes, it was Gordon Brown.
And but then also, like, Chang tracks down the Australian guy who he violently tortures.
In a room full of things to torture people with that you don't expect.
That scene I find to be like the most hard to watch.
It's hard, yeah, for sure.
Because he stabs his legs and his arms.
His arms first. So he can't get up, and then his legs.
Cuts open his eyes, and then he stabs a thing through his head, and it's really fucking gross.
It's crazy gross.
And just that actor, his screaming is
Tim Roth,
awful.
you mean, right?
Tim Roth 2.
Yeah, Tim Roth 2.0.
Just like shrieking, like, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's really tough.
That scene is so funny because it's a dark, intense ass like scene, but I also just find it almost humorous because it's just Chang walking around this room, which is meant to be like a karaoke club of some form, or like a just a club. Like it's meant to be like, that's what the guy calls it anyways. Like, who let you into my club, you know?
Shot in a gay club.
Oh,
Lots of the shots, lots of the stuff in this movie was filmed in Chinatown in Bangkok, in actual brothels, gay clubs, and clubs.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah,
Well,
fascinating.
so that it's a beautiful room, but it's funny because he just walks around it and keeps finding incredibly sharp like hair sticks.
The decor is,
Yeah, like he just reaches into like a fruit basket and pulls out a knife, and you're like, I mean, it makes sense because I guess you'd need a knife to cut fruit, but it does seem odd that there would just be this very lethal looking knife just hidden in this orange.
I think one is like the basic instinct ice pick thing that
Yeah,
she
it
uses.
is. Like, he just reaches into this thing that's literally full of ice picks. I'm like, who needs 10 ice picks?
He doesn't Winding Refn doesn't say it in the commentary, but the part where he cuts his eye, is that not a reference to that really famous surrealist the Dali film?
Probably.
That seems like it.
To
right?
Luis Buñuel.
Yeah, the
Chien
Chien
Andalou.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I suspect so.
That's our cred, our film cred.
There it is. Thank you.
We know about the most famous
Did you-
surrealistic.
Did you wonder if I was an artist before? Now I've said Chien Andalou.
You've watched a 12-minute short film. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our credibility is unquestionable. And so the fight,
We see it. He gets his ass kicked.
yeah, talk to me about what you were saying about how this scene is the one that kind of hinges on what you think of the film.
I think that if in that moment you either understand and do not understand why Ryan Gosling did what he did, why that event took place, is how you, in my opinion, resolve the rest of the story, right? Because for me, that was Ryan Gosling doing something subversive to finally rid himself of his mother in a way that he couldn't before because of his traumatic bond to her, right? But he understood, I think, that it's like, oh, this man can do it. This man can kill her, and I can be rid of this looming thing above my head, right?
Yet another example of Ryan Gosling's impotence.
Exactly, right? Like, I can't kill my own mother, but if I somehow signal to this man who my mother is, then this will just happen because this is who he wants anyways. He wants my mother dead, not me.
Yeah.
Right? But I think there's also the other interpretation, which I think is the one that a lot of people took away, which is like that was actually like a more coincidental happening than not. Like she went because she obviously has business at that club, at that boxing club, because it's her son's club and it's where they essentially launder their money or whatever, right? But like, because you never actually see Ryan Gosling like call mom and be like, yo, come to the club.
Nothing is plotted.
Exactly. Like it really feels like it just kind of happened. And when you think about it as something that just kind of happened, I think you don't have as much empathy for the one moment where Ryan Gosling, even though impotently deciding that he can't kill his mother, finally does something that is the pivot point of her not getting away with her bullshit anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the moment where she even recognizes and goes to him in the back room and it's like, you're the only thing that can stand between this man and me now. Like he now knows who I am, and now if you don't stop him like the way that you did for me when you killed your father, which is the other kind of big reveal, that part about their trauma bond, he will kill me. And I think I think everything Ryan Gosling does from that moment onward is just knowing that it's just a matter of time.
So in the next little bit, he goes to essentially kill the child and the care worker with Charlie, the other one of his associates.
Yeah.
I certainly think in that scene, he's deliberately getting out of the way.
Yeah.
And that's why he doesn't want to kill them, as we see, because he shoots Charlie when Charlie's about to kill the young girl.
Yes.
But Ryan Gosling is like, I just want to get everyone I want to clear the path for Chang to be able to find my mother.
Exactly. I definitely felt that.
Which he does, and he kills Kristen Scott Thomas at the hotel room.
At the hotel room.
And
at one of many balconies that she seems to hang out on.
Oh, yeah. She's got an amazing hotel room.
Yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, it is shocking they didn't have that ready. Like, who is staying? Come on. Like, she's probably the biggest client at the hotel.
It is, yeah. She gets killed in like this big white room where she continues to prove once again that she's an intolerable, terrible person, because the first second she gets is she throws Ryan Gosling under the bus to try and get away from being killed by Chang. I'm not understanding, I think, in that moment that Chang doesn't need any... it's done. Like, you're dead. He's just biding his time at this point, you know?
Yeah, and so then Ryan Gosling finds her, And
And does
just
something
cuts her
really
open
gross.
and sticks his hand inside of her womb. Goes back in the womb.
Goes back in the womb. Yeah, we all needed that symbological moment.
Yeah. There's this bit in the commentary where Winding Refn was like, he was like, at Cannes, a woman approached me about this movie, and she was like, this whole movie, it takes place in a vagina, right? and he was like, I think, yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is like resolving the impotence of masculinity. Right. And yeah, I don't know. It's just that final kind of scene where Ryan Gosling is free of his tormentor, and he, and the movie kind of ends with him getting his hands chopped off.
Yeah, I think I just like the idea of someone approaching Nicolas Winding Refn with that, because it sounds just so excessively French to be like that. To have like, this is 100% what the film means, and it's kind of absurd, but also makes perfect sense.
Yeah, like,
it's like it's very French. Yeah,
checks out.
Yeah. But that's the thing is like this movie. It's like a mama's boy story about impotence. Like it totally is.
Yeah.
And while Ryan was at the house, he takes the sword. After he retracts his hand from the womb of his mother, he goes to Chang and he gives him the sword and presents his hands.
Yeah.
And then slice, karaoke time, baby.
Yeah, beautiful last karaoke scene that we needed. The palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hands are, specifically Ryan Gosling's hands, are a huge thing that comes up in the movie over and over and over again.
Yeah, they're like a motif.
Yeah.
It's and they're a symbol of his impotence, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, I think. And it's no surprise that, like, I think there's a part right when Billy has gone to meet the devil, quote unquote, and therefore summoning Chang,
the devil.
You see Ryan Gosling clenching his hands. You see him looking at his hands in a way. Yeah. And then you get many shots of just his hands at the part where they will be cut off later in the film, which is really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of like premonition on that.
Yeah, dude. That's it. That's the movie. We've solved it. There's no other way to...
There's no other way to interpret it?
No other way to interpret this film. Not at all.
I mean... Maybe. Yeah, the devil. I think maybe the devil came because I think the tagline of this movie has something to do with... I think it was just the tagline when we was Time to Meet the Devil.
Time to Meet the Devil, yeah. It's a
good
one.
It is a good one. Yeah, I definitely like... I as we break it down, it is just a difficult movie. Really, truly, it's just like it's a great movie, but it is a difficult one.
It's rewarding in the engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's rewarding to engage with.
Yeah.
And again, like I said earlier, it's like you don't have to, but it is like, it's so fascinating to me that your partner had such a different reaction to like myself or yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the beauty of it, I think. Like I
mean, isn't that the beauty of good art?
Yeah, and I struggle with that. I don't struggle with it because I don't really care. But like I often think about that with something like Neon Demon. I think is like an incredible movie. We did a pod on it, and I clearly love that film.
Which is your favorite though?
Sorry,
what's your favorite movie though?
Of all time?
No, Refn movie.
Oh, no, Neon Demon.
It would be Neon
for
Demon?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's like head and shoulders above his other films in quality. It's so funny because that might be like a laughable position to other people because they're like, Drive is so clearly his best movie. But it's like, well, I don't know. I think I've watched many of his movies multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Drive is like a fucking it's like drinking Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And it's like less complex. And I think that like something like this or Neon just reward you more for it. I don't know. But at the same time, Coca-Cola tastes good.
It does, and it goes fast. Then there's also the things I think that the aesthetic of the film is interesting too.
It's good.
Because it's beautiful. It is a beautiful movie.
Refn is like one of the more like visually gifted people who work, and he gets really great work out of cinematographers who aren't necessarily like, they're not like Gordon Willis, like they're, like a couple of them, like I don't even remember the cinematographer of this film, but even the one who shot Neon Demon is like, they're not super famous because all of his movies are pretty low budget.
Yeah.
But they do such incredible work with Refn, and I it's like shocking how it's not as admired,
I wonder if it's because it got so tied into like synthwave. Like Refn's whole aesthetic is so like, even just the music in Only God Forgives is like blaring synth music, and discordant piano, and it
Cliff
is
Martinez, former drummer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Cliff Martinez is a huge film score guy.
Well, the score is amazing.
I said this in Neon Demon too. He does his best work with Refn, even though like he works with Soderbergh a lot. Like, but his Refn scores are fucking unreal.
They're unreal. I forget how good the score is, and it just marries so well with the dark, like high contrast red blue that the whole movie carries on through the entirety of it. It's all these beautiful shades of like fluorescent red, fluorescent blue.
The aesthetic washes out the idea that the film might have meaning to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think the film, like, people are like, it's so stylish and fun to watch. That alleviates the need to really delve into the meaning of it, which is okay. That's fine. Like, I don't mind that if you don't care.
I agree with you. I think that Refn's style, as much as it is such eye candy, I think because it's eye candy, a lot of people dismiss it as just eye candy. You know, it's like and to be fair, like if you really think about it, like he'd make great music videos if he hasn't done any. And I'm sure he has.
He hasn't, actually.
He hasn't?
No.
He'd be an amazing music director.
You would think that he started that way.
Totally.
But he didn't.
Almost all of his movies are so much of that, like so much of that style that you would get from like the music video era, where it's like, because that's what music videos were about in a lot of ways, you know? So it's just, to me, that's one of the coolest parts about his practice. It's that it is very much like he doesn't sacrifice tone for the story, and he really tries to kind of like bridge the two into like coalescence of a beautiful glossy film about something that isn't beautiful or glossy at all.
I think people might get like the impression, if they've never really delved into him as like a director, like get the impression that he's like kind of like arty and not very, they might think of him more as like Lynch. Now, David Lynch is like obviously amazing, but the weird thing I find with David Lynch is when you try to listen to David Lynch talk about filmmaking and stuff, he's just kind of like, well, I do it because I'm a genius, and I make these things because I'm a genius. And so I just use my genius and I just make these. That's my impression I get from Lynch, right?
Yeah.
These ideas are like sprouted out of him in this very genius-esque kind of way. Refn is like actually quite logical and like very down to earth and workmanlike in the way he approaches things. Despite the fact that he like gets tarot readings done by like Jodorowsky and stuff. He's like you can tell he's like thought a lot of this stuff like through. Even the idea that a lot of his films are open to interpretation, you can tell that he's like, but that's how I wanted it to be, so I made it that way.
Yeah.
And he because like there was stuff, the director's commentary that I watched is like him and a journalist whose name I'm forgetting, and the journalist is kind of like prodding him with questions the whole time, which is not normal. Like normally directors' commentaries are just talking about the movie. Yeah. But like there's lots of times where like Refn, they're like, he's analyzing his own work. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just like really cool. Like he's really cool about that kind of stuff. He's really open to talking about that.
That's cool. I like that. And I also like a director that can understand that it's like they don't need to explain everything. Art doesn't always need a full like explanation. I think, you know, when I go to a gallery, as much as I want to read like the intention, like the artist statement, it's like I also just want the art to move me on its own, right? Like I think that Refn, in a lot of ways through film, creates accessible moments where you can enter art from a perspective of like from being a viewer that might not understand it, might not like engage with it at the level that he wants, but his art's still beautiful to look at and beautiful and there's still something to perceive and gather from it, right? And then if you want to, you can get nerdy about it and really dive into like the symbology and the deeper stuff that may have gone into it, and the things that maybe Refn himself is like, you don't necessarily need to answer that. At least I'm not going to answer it for you. This is for you to figure out.
What we're doing as an exercise is like the most.
Like maybe he's gonna write to you and be like, you solved it.
Yeah, maybe.
You're like, wow, first podcast I ever heard about this film where you nailed it.
I think there's like a mode. There's a mode of enjoyment that's like many levels like below that. Not I don't mean like in a hierarchical sense, but like that are like just a different way of interpreting. Whereas it's kind of like, I don't know, he just makes beautiful shit, and I like looking at it. And you don't have to really be like, oh, it's all about the womb and impotence, and it takes place in a vagina. Like you don't have to really think of it that way. Yeah, man. Let's wrap this up.
Okay,
it's been really great.
It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Of course.
You're a lovely person.
I'm so humbled to be brought on and to give my opinion about this movie.
Don't be humble at all.
I can only be.
Don't.
Okay.
Everybody, Ricky, thank you again.
Thank you, John.
If you see him on the streets, give him $20. Literally, just take $20 out of your wallet and be like, Ricky, this for you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
If you see Nicolas Winding Refn, give him $20. He probably needs it.
Yeah.
Actually, he probably doesn't, but like he could use it
to make another movie, another low budget movie with your $20.
Film. Yeah. But also just let the $20 bills flow.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.